Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Ruttama-shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 31, The Movement of Living Entities. So we are in the section where now child is coming to the world. So text 24. Patito bhruvyaśram mishrah vishtabhuri vacheshtate roruyati gate jnane viparitam gatim gatah. Translation.
The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood, and plays just like a worm germinated from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of māyā. Hare Krishna.
This is the birth of the child, and this is how the child has just come out. In fact, most of the time the child is unconscious, and the child will be gently slapped by the doctors, and they will be the first thing they will take the to the basin and just wash the child all across, and then bring him to consciousness. Right. So this is the birth process. Welcome to material world. Again, this is very very contextual. Text 25. परच्छन्दं न विदुषा पुष्यमाणो जनेन सह अनभिप्रेतं आपन्नः प्रत्याख्यातुम् अनीश्वरः. Translation.
Translation. After coming out of the abdomen, the child is given to the care of persons who are unable to understand what he wants, and thus he is nursed by such person. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. Purport. Within the abdomen of the mother, the nourishment of the child was being carried on by nature's own arrangement. The atmosphere within the abdomen was not at all pleasing, but as far as the child's feeding was concerned, it was being properly done by the laws of nature. But upon coming out of the abdomen, the child falls into a different atmosphere. He wants to eat one thing, but something else is given to him because no one knows his actual demand, and he cannot refuse the undesirables given to him. Sometimes the child cries for the mother's breast, but because the nurse thinks that it is due to pain within his stomach that he is crying, she supplies him some bitter medicine. The child does not want it, but he cannot refuse it. He is put in very awkward circumstances, and the suffering continues. Hare Krishna.
After coming out, the child is given to the care of somebody who is unable to understand what the child wants, unable to refuse whatever is given because the child is child. He falls into undesirable circumstance. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that within the abdomen of the mother, although the atmosphere was not at all pleasing, the nourishment was carried out by the nature's own arrangement. But once outside, now the child is crying, and when the child is crying, the nurse, they will just try to ascertain why the child is crying. The child may be crying actually for the hunger, but she may think that something, and it's always a trial and error, right? We have this experience. Children means, always, especially that age, 0 to 3, 0 to 6, it's quite a trial and error. And there also there is some sort of suffering. Text 26. शायितो शुचिपर्यङ्के जन्तुस्वेद च दूषिते नेशकण्डूयने अङ्गानाम् आसन उत्थान चेष्टने. Translation.
Lay down on a foul bed infested with sweat and germs. The poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from his itching sensation. To say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. Purport. It should be noted that the child is born crying and suffering. After birth, the same suffering continues, and he cries because he is disturbed by the germs in his foul bed, which is contaminated by his urine and stool. The poor child continues to cry. He is unable to take any remedial measure for his relief.
Yeah. So the child continues to cry, and that we have all the experience. The child is always crying, and this is some of the reasons why the child is crying. Text 27. तुदन्त्यामत्वचं दंशामशकामत्कुणादयः रुदन्तं विगतज्ञानं कृमया कृमिकं यथा. Translation.
In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby, whose skin is tender, just as small worms bite a big worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly. Purport: the word Vigata Jnanam means that the spiritual knowledge which the child developed in the abdomen is already lost due to the spell of māyā. Owing to various kinds of disturbances and being out of the abdomen, the child cannot remember what he was thinking of for his salvation. It is assumed that even if a person acquires some spiritually uplifting knowledge, circumstantially, he is prone to forget it. Not only children but also elderly persons should be very careful to protect their sense of Krishna consciousness and avoid unfavorable circumstances so that they may not forget their prime duty. Hare Krishna.
Vigatagyanam. Now, in the helpless condition, the child is bitten by other jantu. So, entire chapter has begun with Janturu Vacha. Okay, so the child is also called as a Jantu. And so, within the Udar, there were another Krumis inside, and now outside also is bitten. And now what happens is, yeah, he's completely forgotten. Rudantam Vigata Jnanam. Krumayaha Krumikam Yatha. And the child cries bitterly. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada focuses on Vigata Jnana. Vigata Jnana means the spiritual knowledge the child developed in the womb. We have seen that the child is offering such amazing prayers in the womb, is completely forgotten by the spell of Maya. And he cannot remember about his salvation. And therefore, and Prabhupada says here, it is assumed that even if a person acquires some spiritual uplifting knowledge, circumstantially he is prone to forget it. So one should be very careful that Krishna consciousness should not slip away from our hands. It's very, very difficult to come back where we are right now. We have seen dozens of examples of devotees, extremely enthusiastic devotees. For one reason or another, they reduced their rounds, they stopped chanting, they stopped associating with devotees, they just remain good people. And the Vigata Jnana means the knowledge will be completely gone. And they started normal course of life. They started eating onion, garlic, just remained. Of course, they never went to being non-vegetarian because that's where not the culture people have come from. And later, when the testing, trying period of their life, it was over, they are unable to come back. Sometimes we think we don't have time. So that is not the point. Later, we will have time, but we will not have enough interest to pick up mala and chant those 16 rounds, which now we may be struggling to chant for the want of time. Therefore, one very important thing is one should never ever go down from these two things. Following four regulative principles: no meditating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex. and chanting 16 rounds. These are the bare minimum, you know, and one should be always very careful. Sometimes due to pressure, this and that, when we be chanting after 12 o'clock, this, I mean, we all are grihasthas, raising children, having jobs, 10 hours of 8, 10 hours of jobs, 2, 3 hours of travel. Understood, life is not easy. But life it's not easy with Krishna consciousness. And if we let go Krishna consciousness, when the life becomes easy, we will not be able to become devotee. As serious as what we are. Right? And this one should be always very careful that Krishna consciousness should never slip off our life, of our hands. It is not about time. This is a big misunderstanding, or this is a big illusion of Maya, to think that, Prabhuji, I'm struggling so hard right now. Let me wait for some time, and then I will become very wonderful. I will surely pick up, Prabhuji. I will surely pick up 16 rounds. I will surely pick up. Later, you will get time. We have seen very sincere, serious, amazing devotees. Somehow they let go this happen, and it became Herculean task to come back to original momentum. Therefore, we should never break. The momentum should never be broken. Same is true for morning reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It is not easy to read every day half an hour as the first priority. We say begin the day with Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It's not easy, right? Everybody is doing the sacrifice, and reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam itself is one of the greatest sacrifice. But we should not miss it out. Neither I should miss out, neither we should miss out. Why? Because to reconnect becomes very difficult. To come back to the same level of consistency becomes very difficult. And the rule of habit forming is one should never miss on 2 consecutive days, right? If we miss for a week, then it is like, restarting becomes a Herculean task. So, best thing is never to miss. And therefore, we have this idea, right? Break breaks, and therefore, we should never break. Our sport reading morning, we have uptime of literally 99% of the uptime, right? So, here Prabhupada says, let's read those words once again. It is assumed that even if a person acquires some spiritually uplifting knowledge, circumstantially he is prone to forget it. Not only children, but also the elderly persons should be very careful to protect their sense of Krishna consciousness and avoid unfavorable circumstances so that they may not forget their prime duty of Krishna consciousness. So, Srila Prabhupada is giving urging and warning, both is there in this purport, that one should, let us not go in that situation, let us not those things happen to us, right, where we are prone to such unfavorable circumstance. Text 28. इत्येवं शैशवं भुक्त्वा दुःखं पौगण्डमेव च अलब्धाभिसित अज्ञानात् इद्धं मन्यु शुचार्पितः. Translation.
In this way, the child passes through his childhood suffering different kinds of distresses and attains boyhood. In boyhood also he suffers pain or desires to get things he can never achieve, and thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry. Purport. From birth to the end of 5 years of age is called childhood. After 5 years up to the end of the 15th year is called Pauganda. At 16 years of age, youth begins. The distresses of childhood are already explained, but when the child attains boyhood, he is enrolled in a school which he does not like. He wants to play, but he is forced to go to school and study and take responsibility for passing examinations. Another kind of distress is that he wants to get some things with which to play, but circumstances may be such that he is not able to attend them, and he thus becomes aggrieved and feels pain. In one word, he is unhappy, even in his boyhood, just as he was unhappy in his childhood. What to speak of youth? Boys are apt to create so many artificial demands for playing, and when they do not attain satisfaction, they become furious with anger, and the result is suffering.
So now there is a further growth. In this way, the child passes through his Shaishava, and then Pauganda, and then Yauvana. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, Shaishava means 0 to 5 is Shaishava. Pauganda means 5 to 15, right? 5 to 15 is Pauganda. And Kaishora means 15 onwards, that is Kaishora is. So, and there is always a demands to play. And this is a different perspective, right? This we are looking from another perspective. Another time we will also read that, how important it is for parents to take care of the children, parents to, in fact, Srila Prabhupada, in one of the letter he writes to a mother, and he's saying that, treat your child like a deity, and you should be caring for the child as one devotee cares for the deity in the temple, right? So we should be, aware of what paradigm we are reading, and this is particularly this paradigm. Text 29. सहदेहेन मानेन वर्धमानेन मन्युना करोति विग्रहं कामी कामिषुवन्ताय चात्मनः. Translation.
With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, verse 36, Arjuna inquired from Krishna about the cause of a living being's lust. It is said that a living entity is eternal and, as such, qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. Then what is the reason he falls prey to the material and commits so many sinful activities by the influence of material energy? In reply to this question, Lord Krishna said that it is lust which causes a living entity to glide down from the exalted position to the abominable condition of material existence. This lust circumstantially changes into anger. Both lust and anger stands on the platform of the mode of passion. Lust is actually the product of the mode of passion, and in the absence of satisfaction of lust, the same desire transforms into anger on the platform of the ignorance. When ignorance covers the soul, it is the source of his degradation to the most abominable condition of hellish life. To raise oneself from the hellish life to the highest position of spiritual understanding is to transform his lust into love of Krishna. Sri Narottam Das Thakur, a great Acharya of the Vaishnava Sampradaya, said, Kama Krishna Karmarpani. Due to our lust, we want many things for our sense gratification, but the same lust can be transformed into purified way so that we want everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anger also can be utilized towards a person who is atheistic or who is envious of the personality of Godhead. As we have fallen into his material existence because of our lust and anger, the same two qualities can be utilized for the purpose of advancing in Krishna consciousness, and one can elevate himself again to his former pure spiritual position. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore recommended that because in material existence we have so many objects of sense gratification which we need for the maintenance of the body, we should use all of them without attachment for the purpose of satisfying the senses of Krishna. That is the actual renunciation.
With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, because all this life is all about, the mindless life, which is simply dedicated to sense gratification, increases his false prestige and anger, and creates enmity with similarly lusty people. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Srila Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita, and this is Arjuna's question. Arjuna is asking, my dear Lord, what is the root? Arjuna uvacha, athakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushah anichanapi varashneya baladiva niyojitah. That how, that anichan, what is that one is impelled to doing sinful activities, anichan, even unwillingly, as if one is forcefully doing it. And Lord Krishna quickly answers this. What is the answer? He says,
Kamesha
Kamesha
Krodesha.
Krodesha Rajoguna Samudbhavam. Yeah, right. Mahashano Mahapapma Vidhi Enam Iya Vairanam. Srila Prabhupada explains that Kama comes from Rajoguna, Kama and Krodha. So what is the sequence is there is a Rajoguna, and when there is an excessive Rajoguna will turn to lust, intense desire. Desire when fulfilled will go for more desire, Lobha. And when the lust is unfulfilled, it will go to Krodha. And therefore, this platform of Rajoguna is always, this is the Prabhupada says, platform of the mode of passion, where the things are happening. So now, Rupa Goswami says, all these anarthas can also be engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. And Srila Prabhupada quotes here Narottam Das Thakur, who says that Kama Krishna Karma Arpane, Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane. That Kama has to be engaged in service of the Supreme Lord. Kama Krishna Karma Arpane. Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane. And Krodha should be engaged to deal with the envious people. Lobha Sadhu Sanghe Harikatha. Lobha should be engaged with Sadhu Sangha and Harikatha. And similarly, one after another, one can keep on engaging. Only Dvesha cannot be engaged. Okay, Dvesha one has to give up. So Prabhupada says these two activities of lust and anger, they also can be utilized in the purpose of Krishna consciousness. How? Kama Krishna Karma Arpane, by doing a lot of seva, engaging one's senses and mind in the seva, mind in planning and senses in doing seva. What happens is one will engage one's Kama in Krishna's service, and Krodha can be engaged by engaging accordingly. Somewhere else Prabhupada writes like Hanumanji and Arjuna, they fought the war and they engaged their Krodha in the service of the Supreme Lord. And this is Rupa Goswami calls as Yukta Vairagya, Anasaktasya Vishya, that engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord. Text 30. Bhutai pancha arabdhe dehe dehi abhut sakrit aham mama iti asadgraha karoti kumati matim. Translation.
By the ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With his misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. Purport. The expansion of ignorance is explained in this verse. The first ignorance is to identify one's material body, which is made of 5 elements, as the self, and the second is to accept something as one's own due to a bodily connection. In this way, ignorance expands. The living entity is eternal, but because of his accepting non-permanent things, misidentifying his interest, he is put into ignorance and therefore he suffers material pangs. Hare Krishna.
So now here, by such ignorance, the living entity thinks himself as this material body. Now he is Satchidananda, the living entity, but he is thinking himself as the material body, which is made up of Panchabhautika, right? Talks about this 5 gross material elements. And then the non-permanent things as his own things. So this is Aham Mameti. Aham Mameti means there is a false identification of who I am, Aham, and what is mine. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, this is the expansion of the ignorance. What a beautiful word. Right. The first ignorance is to accept things that one is material body. And when this identification goes wrong, everything else automatically goes wrong. Right. And Prabhupada says this is how the ignorance expands, by accepting non-permanent things and misidentifying one's interest. One is put into the ignorance and thus suffers into the material pangs. Text 31. Tadartham kurute karma yadbaddha yati samsmritim yonu yati dadat klesham avidya karma bandhana. Translation.
For the sake of the
Translate.
body, which is
Go ahead, Mataji. Go ahead.
which is source of constant trouble to him and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activities. He performs various actions which cause him to be subjected to repeated birth and death. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one has to work to satisfy Yajna or Vishnu. For any work done without the purpose of satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of bondage. in the conditioned state of living entity, accepting his body as himself, forgets his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and acts on the interest of his body. He takes the body as himself, his bodily expansions as his kinsman, and the land from which his body is born as worshipable. In this way, he performs all sorts of misconceived activities, which lead to his perpetual bondage in repetition of birth and death in various species. In modern civilization, the so-called social, national, and government leaders mislead people more and more under this bodily conception of life, with the result that all the leaders with their followers are gliding down to hellish conditions birth after birth. An example is given in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Andha yathandir upaniyamanaha, when the blind man leads several other blind men, and the result is that all of them fall down in the ditch. This is actually happening. There are many leaders to lead the ignorant public, but because every one of them is bewildered by the bodily conception of life, there is no peace and prosperity in human society. So-called yogis who perform various bodily feats are also in the same category as such ignorant people, because the Hatha Yoga system is especially recommended for persons who are grossly implicated in the bodily conception. The conclusion is that as long as one is fixed in the bodily conception, he has to suffer birth and death.
For the sake of body, what is the body? Body is which is the source of constant trouble to himself. So this is the tadartham kurute karma. So here the exact words are avidya karma bandhana, right? And the second is samsmritim, which follows because he is bound by the ties of ignorance and fruitive activities. So this is the body is being explained by two adjectives. He performs various actions which cause him to the subjected to repeated birth and death. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that any activity which is not for Krishna, not for purpose of satisfying the Supreme Lord, is going to yield bondage. Yadnyarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhano. If the activity is not performed for the sake of pleasing Yagya Purusha, Lord Vishnu, there is always going to be karma bandhana. And this karma bandhana, because of these various activities, the living entity will forget the sambandha gyan and will have a wrong identification in terms of what is me, what is mine, and what is to be worshipable. He will think I am this body, and because the body has come from this particular land, therefore the land is also worshipable. And these are the bodily byproducts, therefore they are own my kinsmen. Right, and this is how the living entity leads entirely misled life. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains, this misconception is also propagated in modern civilization by the so-called leader who are also, putting forward this a kind of a blind propaganda. Andhayatandhe rupagi amana. Prabhupada says that when the leader is blind and the followers are also blind, all of them together they will fall in a ditch. And then there will be no peace and prosperity in such human society. Yogis are also not, they also fall in the same category, because by performing so many yoga activities, all they want to do just remain on the bodily platform, forgetting that pranayam and yogasana should further lead to dharana, dhyana, and then samadhi, which is devotional service. So in conclusion, Prabhupada says, as long as one is fixed in the bodily conception, he has to suffer this samskriti, the repeated cycle of birth and death. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
everyone.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Bol.
Krishna. Ah, yes.
Prabhuji, the mothers of the womb, child is praying for the God, and he's come out his material world, and Maya will catch us. How can he change his destiny?
Yeah, the destiny, how it is changed is, the child is fortunate enough to born to the devotee parents. Then, then naturally the child will flow towards Krishna consciousness. So that is one way. And this another way is, then therefore we should have some program for children in our society. So we used to have this program previously. We are going to start it also a little later, but we should tap the children's interest by something like teaching them Rama Raksha, Vishnu Sahasranam, Hanuman Chalisa. Some spiritual samskaras are very important for children. And especially that age, as early as possible, early in the age when children pick up, those impressions remain very deep on the child. And even later ages of, if they are distracted at all, still there is very high chance that they will come back. And therefore, as a devotee, not only we should work on our children so that we give them spiritual environment, we should also be cultivating, some programs in our society where we can teach children something. Like we used to teach children for years. This program went on. Rama Raksha, Hanuman Chalisa, Vishnu Sahasranam, and children, they picked up everything, all these things, right? So this is one very powerful way. Correct?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Ashwin Kumar.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada, thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhupada. Thank you,
Prabhupada,
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. हरे कृष्णा।
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
हाँ, मुझे वो जो अनम्यूट लिखते हैं ना, सुनाई नहीं देता बिल्कुल भी। द होस्ट वुड लाइक टू स्पीक, वहां जब आप स्टार्ट करते हैं तो सुनाई देता है, उसके पहले का सुनाई नहीं देता है, एकदम लो वॉइस होता है, वॉल्यूम हाई रखते हैं तो भी।
Oh, acha, acha, acha. I will ask Tapan Prabhu to look into this. Anybody else face the same problem?
मुझे तो होता है।
Mataji, आपका वॉइस मतलब डिवाइस का वॉइस एट द टॉप है ना?
हाँ,
फुल
उसको
वॉइस
वॉल्यूम हाई रखती हूँ, वॉल्यूम हाई रखती हूँ
वॉल्यूम
उसका
हाई है
फिर
ना
भी।
उसका?
हम्म,
Yeah. Let us see if same thing happens. Then we have to see.
हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.